And I am starting again with these notes and videos about the books that I am reading and they inspire me somehow. So let's kick start with this one. So today we are diving deep into a modern classic that is essential for anyone who wants to master the art of personal narrative, The Situation and the Story by Vivian Gornick. Let's bypass all the fluff and get straight to the point. When I first read this book, I was in the middle of writing my third book, which is personal narrative, and I am narrating all my experience through the migration process in London. And like many writers, I was stuck trying to figure out the boundaries of my own text. This book completely blew my mind because it gave me the exact tool I needed. I needed to clarify the crucial difference between a personal essay and a memoir. It defined my entire writing process, and that's why I'm so grateful for this book. If I had to summarize this book in a single definite sentence, that would be that this book is a fundamental guide for anyone who has chosen to write from a personal perspective, which is what I've done so far. My three books are personal narrative, and I can see how I've been growing in the technique and how I improve my way of writing, but it has always been about me and how I experience the world and how I transit the feelings and the experiences and the events that go through my life. I think it is the ultimate roadmap to turn a raw life experience into literature. So that's why I recommend it so much. So let's get into it. First, I'm going to talk about the premise and the context of the book. Here, the main problem that Gornick identifies is the what is the most common mistakes writers do when tackling the personal narrative or memoir is falling into pure confession or self-indulgent victimism mentality. Gornick corrects this immediately. She tells you how to improve that and how personal narrative is not an exercise in egocentric or being self-absorbed. It is a process of self-knowledge, discovery, and personal definition. And that is what struck me, and it helped me to understand why am I writing what I am writing. So to understand how to fix this, you must understand the core premise of this book, the difference between the situation and the story. And that's how it's called, right? So the situation is the context, the event, that external circumstance, or the raw experience itself. The story, and this is where it becomes a narrative and literature, is the emotion, the internal conflict, the emotional experience that arises as a consequence of that event. So the story is what actually preoccupies the narrator. So the narrator is telling you how he or she felt with that event. It is the emotional conclusion of the experience, the insight, the wisdom, the final distilled product of what happened and what the writer makes out of that event. As writers, we must imagine ourselves in very specific of a very specific version of who we are, and we need to interact with that person. So understanding what Andrea is the one that is writing, what was the situation of that specific Andrea had to experience, what was the feeling of that Andrea. There are many within me, so I need to understand what is the Andrea that I want to be the narrator of that specific situation. So, moving on into the core or the key takeaways of this book, I think one of the key themes or key takeaways that explains in this book is the creation of a reliable narrator, or what the persona. What she says is basically that to write a successful personal narrative, it is indispensable to identify exactly who is speaking on this page. As I was saying, who is that Andrea that is writing? In my case, for example, I had to find the specific Andrea who was going to narrate the text or the different chapters of the text that I finished. What are her conflicts, or what are the different Andrea's conflicts, her shames, her differences, and the specific insights she brings into this narrative? You must use yourself, your reactions, your vulnerabilities to explore that specific experience. In my book, I learned that I had a different narrator in each of the chapters because each chapter was a different experience. And this book helped me to understand the narrator and how to stick to that narrator and make it truthful for that specific chapter. And this is what Gornick calls a reliable narrator, which means staying completely faithful to that specific persona that you chose. For example, in the persona I chose for one of the chapters, it meant to narrate the profound loneliness of being an immigrant. That the Andrea writing that story must always be that specific version, the one that feels the loneliness, the suffocation, and being no way, and I didn't see any way out. The Andrea who is happy with her professional growth, the Andrea that is visiting the family in Colombia, or the Andrea who is in love cannot intervene in that specific text. If we want to give them a voice, then we need to create another chapter. But if there is a chapter where I chose that the Andrea that felt lonely is the one who's going to be the narrator, I need to be faithful to that Andrea. That is what makes a narrator reliable, and that is what Gornick tells us in this book, because the reader needs to trust that specific persona in the one, and trust that that is the one who is telling you the story, right? So you need to stick with that, and that is what makes the reading of a specific book, chapter, personal narrative, memoir, essay, whatever it is, makes it interesting and truthful, and people want to stick with it. So once the persona takes the floor, they do confess, they try to self-investigate. That is how the story creates this movement, this dynamism, purpose, and dramatic tension, because again, you're talking about yourself. So in order for this story to be interesting and have dynamism, you need to start exploring what is it that you want to tell, what is it that you want to write about, and how are you going to navigate that. As Gornick very beautifully puts it in the book, we are in the presence in each instance of a mind puzzling its way out of its own shadows. That is what we want to read. That is what is interesting, and that is what makes the reader keep on reading this essay or memoir. Gornick illustrates this by analyzing brilliant authors. Personally, I feel deeply identify with her analysis of Lynn Darling's essay, For Better and for Worse. Darling writes about marriage, exploring the deep fears that exist with it, and showing which of those fears actually become true through her own experience. Is a masterclass in using the self to examine a universal institution, which is marriage. So then, if we go to the deeper insights of this book and what made 5 days or something like that, is this is not a book of technicalities. This book gives you the core and the sense of why are you writing from a personal perspective? Why do you want to tell your story? And so it did lead me to a massive personal discovery regarding why I was writing and why writing for me was so therapeutic. So Gornick touches on this in the memoir section and stating very beautiful quote as well, which is a serious life by definition is a life one reflects on, a life one tries to make sense of and bear witness to. Everywhere in the world, women and men are rising up to tell their stories out of the now commonly held belief that one's own life signifies. So that was, it didn't only give me the sense and the purpose of how to write correctly what I was writing and how to make it interesting and not just an egomaniac, but actually understanding why do I keep on writing? What is the essence of writing for me at least? So that understanding was very, very essential for what I was doing and what I do. To deepen into our understanding of the memoir, Gornick explains that it requires an honest exploration of the self. You must begin with the persona that the society and your environment have dictated and convinced you that you are. And then from that starting point, the question and deconstruction of the identity on the page. So both the writer and the reader become active witnesses to this process of understanding. Therefore, at the end of the memoir, because we are talking about specifically the memoir here, the writer does not deliver a neat, definitive answer, but rather a profound exploration that sheds light on the true self. I believe, and this is a personal belief, we are never going to fully understand who we are, but the process of exploring the different personas and the different versions of who we are can give us a lot of light. And that is what we do in the memoir. So Gornick references Rousseau as the person who kickstarted the memoirs as we know it today, noting that he claimed he only had himself to write about, yet knew little to nothing about himself, committing to exploring that unknown territory on the pages. According to Gornick, this is how the memoir, as we know it today, was born. A memoir that genuinely captures a reader interest must navigate the depths of the self-discovery, achieving what she says in the book, movement away from the murk of being told who you are by the accident of circumstances towards the clarity that identifies accurately the impulses of the self. So now to conclude and to go to the fifth section of this video with notes of this beautiful, beautiful book, The Situation and the Story of Vivian Gornick, let's talk about who this book should be read by, who are the readers of this book, in my opinion. I will recommend The Situation and the Story to anyone that is interested in the craft of writing, as well readers who prefer memoirs, essays, and personal narrative and want to understand the inner workings of these genres in a simple, entertaining, and incredible, clear way. I cannot emphasize this enough. This is not an academic book. It is, but and I could completely understand it, read it, and just go through it very simple and understandable. So, as I said, it's not about technicalities, it's more about our understanding of what is the difference between two of the main genres of personal narrative, which are and essays. My final rating, of course, it would be 5 out of 5. Quite bluntly, without this book, I wouldn't have been able to finish my own book that is coming now in July, which I am launching in Bogota. it is a masterclass, a tool, and a necessity for it was for me, and I think it can help a lot to the people that want to write about themselves. And well, this is it about this book. Thank you so much for listening or watching. I will be posting more of these videos, so if you like it, please subscribe and all what the YouTubers say, which I still don't know, but please follow, please share, and let me know your thoughts.